Okay, I know that I'm the last thing standing between you and the bar. So we're gonna keep this light and fast. But I was asked to provide some sales tips about some of our modules and some of the things that we think can help you. Without any further ado, really fast, little roundtable group discussion. What's great about your company? Anybody just sound out something? And I don't have the ability to take notes. Would somebody quickly write these for me? Anybody? Amy will write them? Okay. What's great about your company? Culture. Okay, who said that? Mike? Or sorry, Matt? Matt said culture. Great, thank you. And again, it's okay if it's that light. Let's just go fast. What's great about your company? Customer service. Customer service, awesome. Did you get that one? What's great about your company? CCC? I've been to your company, it is great. People. People, you have great people. Okay, awesome. Aldo, what's great about your company? Customer service again, so we have 2 votes for customer service. Support. Greg says support is good. Anybody else? What was that? Flexibility. Okay, I like that.
1 point of contact.
Amy says 1 point of contact. Good. Okay.
We have fun.
Fun?
Great salespeople.
Even better tech people.
Great salespeople, better tech people, and we have partners. And you know, I'm not talking about life partners, but there's, you know, not that there's anything wrong with it, really, whatever. Okay, what else? Anything else? Anybody, any other thoughts? Michael, I didn't hear from you. What's great about your company?
Well, I heard flexibility tossed out. We have an owner that wants to keep employees around.
Wants to keep employees, okay? Pat, how long have you guys been in business? Could you give me a number? 33 years in business. Okay, let's write that one down too. That's a good one. Okay, so anything else you want to add? So it occurred to me, as I look at this list, that your competitors are walking in and they're saying, you know what, here's the truth. Our culture sucks. Our customer service is so-so. Our people are okay. Most of them have only been here about 20 minutes. We're not really flexible. We have multiple points of contact, and we've been in business about 3 weeks. Is that what your competitors are saying?
Probably not.
So what are the chances your competitors are saying, we have a great culture, we have great customer service, we've been in business for a lot of years. What's the chances they're saying the exact same things that you're saying? Well, they better be, right? Because the guy's not saying, oh my gosh, Greg, thank goodness you're here. The last guy has no culture and everybody's like brand new. That's not what they're saying. And so our question to you is, what makes you different? Axe decided, and again, I didn't plan this until yesterday, but Axe decided in a very crowded hair care marketplace that demographic of 12-year-old boys through about 30 that they were going to go after hard. Their ads were going to be a little bit dirty. And really, there's nothing different between their hair products and someone else's hair products, to be honest with you. But they advertise in a specific way that makes my son say he will only wear their stuff. Now, is that what they've done? Even if you don't believe me and you haven't looked at the thing that I talked about yesterday, go ahead and peel that sticker off and look at the instructions. It's filthy. It's filthy. And they did it on purpose because that hits my teenage son right in the middle of his demographic. Where is he? And he loves it. I'm creating pop culture references. And the fun part about that is they're being very successful. And so I'm asking you, they went into a crowded place that had all these old stuffy Paul Mitchells and whatever, and they flipped it on its head. And so I'm asking you, again, what makes you different? Because you just said your culture, and so did the last guy. And you just said great technology, and so did the last guy. And you just said, and so the last guy. So what's going to make you different? And so this is a clear differentiator. And if we haven't made that abundantly clear yet, then stay with us. We're only going to be here half a day more together. But if you have this and they don't, I believe that's a clear differentiator. VXTracker for the analytics. In a silo, each of these aren't necessarily terribly special. Can we be real frank about that? We've never told you that we actually have that Pulse is miles better than any other network monitoring piece out there. It's not. We do look at it through the lens of voice quality, though, and not everybody else does that. Okay? There are other mobile solutions, but pulling mobility records into a call detail record and looking at it side by side and saying, what do I do on my mobile versus my desk, and should you even have a mobile or should you even have a desk phone, and understanding the totality of that picture is different than anybody else out there. We haven't seen anybody else doing that. The ability to take analytics and mobility and lay them on top of each other in a dashboard scenario like we talked about yesterday, and seeing as my call volume increases, my actual mean opinion score decreases, that's pretty cool. And then being able to add in the VXPulse piece. And this is kind of nascent a little bit in some ways, but follow me if you will. If you as a tech support or help desk person could find a call that somebody said they're had a problem on and then listen to it and decide if they're being a whiny user, or you can really hear an issue, and a good tech could probably hear delay, jitter, loss, issues. You could say, you know what? That doesn't tell me exactly what piece of hardware caused the problem or where the problem was, but now I can kind of hear and experience what they're experiencing. Man, I think that's a powerful combination. And so if you go back and say, what makes us different? Could I encourage you to say that this could be one of those things that in your local market or in the market where you compete, that you can say, we have something that the other guy down the street doesn't have. By the way, we're not going to saturate any of your markets. We're making that commitment to you. We're not going to come in to where you are and try to get 10 more people like you to sign up. In fact, that's never been our model. 1 or 2 in a major metropolitan area, 3 or 4 maybe, depending on the size of the place. We're not going to come in and try to sign up everybody and their brother. I thought of the Richters all of a sudden, right? We're not going to do that. I did. That made me laugh more than you. But we're not going to do that because our goal is to have nice distribution across the ecosystem, across the country. I guess what I'm saying, Carlos, I can actually probably stand on this. We're not looking for another short-tail dealer in Mexico at this point. Okay? So does that make sense? We want you to have a special differentiator, something unique about you, so that when you walk in, you can say something that the guy down the street cannot. And we want to have, 75 or 100 active dealers around the country. That's our business plan. It is not 2,000 or 3,000 active dealers. We are not looking for a short-tail distribution story where we end up in, everybody's possible product catalog list. Okay? And I don't want you to hold me fast to a specific number of how many partners we're going to have, but trust me, it's a small number, not a vast number of partners. We don't want a vast number, because when you get too many, it becomes half vast anyway, and that's really not our plan. So, my next question for you, again, moving quickly through this, and I'll keep a watch up here so I stay on target. Does anybody, Byron, are you with me, brother? Yeah. What exactly is taking place at this exact moment? Do you remember this? This is game 6. Okay? I can't remember who put up a shot, but I know Tim Duncan rebounded it. No, I'm sorry, Tim Duncan rebounded it. I know that Chris Bosch rebounded it. Yep. Yeah, tip. Yeah, exactly. Rebound. And then he looked and slid the ball out to Ray Allen, who was exactly perfectly positioned, hit that ridiculous 3, went to overtime, and they won game 6. And really, San Antonio should have won the series that day. I know exactly where I was when this took place. So do you. I was with you. Do you remember? Or had you had too much crab that night? We were at, Roger, John, and I were at a Joe's Crab Shack in San Diego. And the place was raucous, and it was fun. Do you know why Ray Allen was prepared to make that shot right there? Does anybody know how many shots Ray Allen takes a day? And he's done it his entire career. Anybody have a guess? 233. Oddly specific.
And wrong.
Over the years, his trainers say he takes on average about 500 shots every day, game day or not. Even on game day, shows up at the arena about 3 hours early, takes his 500 shots, gets a nice sweat going, then goes in to the locker room and starts his game day prep with everybody else. First guy there always. And he's taken about 500 shots his entire career. But there's something that I just read this last couple months that absolutely made the hair on my head stand up. 500 shots is amazing, right? And for a pro, that's what you do. You know, Tiger putts, 100 putts within 5 feet, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, it hasn't been working for him since the incident. But I read a little article from one of Ray Allen's trainers, and he has this crazy routine. So in addition to the 500 shots, Byron, you'll love this if you haven't heard this. This is amazing. You love this kind of stuff. He actually has a training routine where he lays down in the key. So he's laying here. His trainer shouts, "Go." He pops up, he sprints to the corner, never looks at his feet, gets his feet set, and they toss him the ball and he takes that shot. He's been doing it about 15 years. And he does it over and over every day. He probably does they say about 50 to 100 of those. So he's laying on the ground, jumps up, knows exactly where that spot is, doesn't even have to look at his feet, and he's ready to shoot. And in this critical instant, when Chris Bosch suddenly gets this rebound, he actually had crashed for the rebound, realized he wasn't going to get it, and Bosch was, and retreated right to that spot, never looked at his feet, caught the ball, and hit the shot. And everybody said, "That was amazing." He said, "That wasn't amazing. I do that every day, 100 times. 100 times on the stupidest shot you could laying down, jump up, run. It blows my mind that he would do that." Byron had a thought.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Sports science actually did a deeper dive into that. He said he was the only, based on statistics and based upon his pattern of regimen of feet and everything, he was the only possible person in the NBA that hit that shot at that moment.
I'll give you one more for us old timers, and I have to say, last night it was really a pleasure for Carrie had had a couple of drinks, and in the car home he said, "You're only 46? I thought you were in your mid-50s." So I feel so good about that moment. He said, "Well, you project kind of an older fatherly image." Anyway, in any case, for those of us that are a little bit older, you remember the catch with Dwight Clark? They said that Joe Montana in practice, that coach said, "We're going to run this goofy play," and they did it at the end of every practice. And he'd run down to the end of the end zone, run across, Montana would throw it high, like stupid high, Dwight Clark would jump up and catch it, people would go, "Coach, why are we practicing this? This is ridiculous." I mean, usually it's the corner fade or all these other options, and yet in the Super Bowl, in the very instant that there was no other option, they were suddenly prepared to do what seemed ridiculous at the time. And I just read again recently that Dwight said when he let the ball go, it was about 12 feet in the air. And there was one guy who could run across the end of the end zone and jump up and catch that. My question for you is, are you sending your best sales guys out without any practice? And even if we're veterans, like I've been doing this 20-something years, we should all be practicing. And what kinds of things can we practice? Okay? All professionals need to practice. Role play sometimes is embarrassing, well, especially for us guys in our, mid-50s. And so but we should practice. So what kinds of things can you practice? I think you should just practice a few basic things all the time. One of them's, we call it the case open. Everybody has their own language, but it's that, "Hey, Greg, what do you do for a living?" And then you have 3 sentences to say what you do for a living. Roger doesn't know I'm going to do this to him, but Roger, stand up and give us one of the case opens on one of our products or modules.
buy smarter, deploy faster, and deliver a better result to your end users. I challenge you to take a look at it and not agree with me that it's the best way to buy technology.
If everybody in your company could do that on every line of business that you sell, how awesome would that be? We practice that. We get together and we practice it. Hi, my name's Doug. I'm from LVM Inc. We're a cloud-based analytics company. One of our modules, VXPulse, has been awesome for helping people decide if they want to deploy Link, if their network is actually ready. In fact, one of our customers found out that they would have embarrassed themselves in front of all 5,000 of their users had they not done the network assessment. I think we could probably do the same thing for you. Can we set up an appointment and talk about it? If it's really well rehearsed, then when you wing it, it sounds great. If it's not really well rehearsed and you wing it, it sounds a little bit like this presentation. And so we recommend that you practice. And case open's one of the things you can practice. That elevator pitch, that quick pitch. And you never know when you're going to have a chance to give it. I'd practice those over and over and over. And I get to where everybody in your organization, tech, sales, and everybody can say very quickly what you do. We did some of this training when I worked at Americom for about 20 minutes. I was lucky enough to go out on a golf tournament with Pat. We came up to a hole. The guy said, so what does Americom do? And Pat said, Doug, I'd love to give you our case open. I'd seriously been there like 2 weeks. But I had studied hard, and I was prepared. I said, we do da-da-da-da-da-da. And then Pat goes, geez, that was pretty good. I said, well, thank you, Pat. I practiced. It wasn't on accident. What else can you study or practice? We have a little process we call the reframe. That's whenever you go to a meeting, you talk about what you talked about last time and reset the stage. Had an opportunity to do this again this week. We went into USANA. The first time we went, it was the CIO, Roger, and I. The next time we went, it was me, Michael, and the guy that the CIO had assigned to understand whether the product set was worth them taking a look at. I said, I know you weren't in the last meeting, Michael, but it would be interesting if we just sort of reset. I went through a little bit of the notes we talked about last time, kind of set the parameters, and then I turned it to Mark, who was the customer, potentially, and Mark said, yeah, and what I'm most interested in is bandwidth, da-da-da-da-da. He gave him 5 points. Michael knew exactly what to hit, knocked it out of the park. But it's because I said, last time we talked about this, and this is what you said was important. Is that accurate? Is that what's critical to you? And he said, yes, but, and he added 3 more things, and then we knew exactly what to talk about. Every single time we have a conversation, regardless of why we're there, we reframe it. We say, last time we said this, you asked for the following. Is that right? And they're giving you permission to say, yeah, let's talk again. Again, I know this is sort of basic sales stuff, but I think it's things that you can practice. You can practice and get better at. I think there's probably in your business, and I don't know what exactly all of you sell and what all of you do, I believe in your business there's no more than 8 common objections. Maybe there's 10, maybe there's 6, it doesn't matter. I believe there's a manageable number of common objections, and how great would it be if everybody practiced all the common objections, and when they got one where they said, well, gosh, I think you guys are too expensive. I've already rehearsed it so many times I know exactly what to say. You know what? You're probably right. And we're not X, Y, and Z, but here are the things we add. And you know what? I'd give them the takeaway. We're probably not a fit for you if that's your argument because of all the other things that we do, and we don't want to get in a scenario where we're nickel and diming you anyway, so we're probably not a good fit for you. I think that's a great way to handle the price objection, but you determine as a group what the best way to handle those are, and then make sure your people are good at each one of those, whatever they might be. Honestly, I believe there's 8 to 10 max for every business. And those are things you can rehearse. And you never get caught flat-footed when somebody says, yeah, but Nancy, I don't want a 1U blade server in my environment. Well, okay, but here are the reasons why that kind of makes sense. And if they push back a couple of times, maybe it's not a fit. Maybe it's time to cut bait rather than fish. I think I said that phrase backwards, but no one ever says it backwards. It's actually better that way. Now that you think about it, I mean, anybody can stand there and fish. Then the other thing we talk about all the time is a scheduled next event. You should never leave a meeting with knowing what's next. Hey, maybe I'll follow up with you in a couple of weeks. No. Yeah, we'll send some stuff over and then, maybe check in with you. No. When I get back to my office, I'm going to send you the things we talked about. I'd like to put it down for a week from Thursday to call you, maybe around mid-morning. If you can't get them to close on that, you're never going to get them to close on a deal. They won't close on the next thing you're going to do. And by the way, if you don't have a scheduled next event in your calendar or in your task list, then when the boss says, hey, what's going on with the XYZ account? Oh, you know, I'm going to check in with him in a while. Think maybe he'll think about some stuff. Maybe we'll get together, play a little tiddlywinks. You know, lunch is probably on the horizon. Seriously? That's not sales. I don't know what that is, but it's not sales. Has to have a scheduled event, date, time, on the calendar. And if they won't commit to the next event, I'm telling you, they're never going to commit. And again, I'm not telling you stuff you don't already know, but I am telling you things that you can actually practice. These are the pieces I think that everybody can practice and get better at. Okay? And again, we're still right on time. So I don't know if you guys know who Clayton Christensen is. Clayton Christensen wrote The Innovator's Dilemma and a whole bunch of other kind of business books. He's a Harvard professor who then talks a little bit about business. I want you to look at this and see if we can maybe start asking a little bit better set of questions. So, Roger, we might not need to crank it for this. This was relatively quiet. Oh, I don't have a speaker on. Never mind. I can crank yours up, right? Okay, let me see what happens. This is going to be an adventure. Where'd she go? All right.
To do things for us. And understanding what job we have to do in our lives for which we would hire a product is really the key to cracking this problem of motivating customers to buy what we're offering. So I wanted just to tell you a story about a project we did for one of the big fast food restaurants. They were trying to goose up the sales of their milkshakes. They had just studied this problem up the gazoo. They brought in customers who fit the profile of the quintessential milkshake consumer. And they'd give them samples and ask, could you tell us how we can improve our milkshakes so you'd buy more of them? Do you want it chocolatey or cheaper, chunky or chewier? They get very clear feedback. They would then improve the milkshake on those dimensions, and it had no impact on sales or profits whatsoever. So one of our colleagues went in with a different question on his mind, and that was, I wonder what job arises in people's lives that cause them to come to this restaurant to hire a milkshake. So we stood in a restaurant for 18 hours one day and just took very careful data. What time did they buy these milkshakes? What were they wearing? Were they alone? Did they buy other food with it? Did they eat it in the restaurant or drive off with it? It turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold before 8 o'clock in the morning. The people who bought them were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So to figure out what job they were trying to hire it to do, we came back the next day and stood outside the restaurant so we could confront these folks as they left milkshake in hand. And in language that they could understand, we essentially asked, excuse me please, but I got to sort this puzzle out. What job were you trying to do for yourself that caused you to come here and hire that milkshake? And they'd struggle to answer, so we'd then help them by asking other questions like, well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire a milkshake. What did you hire? And then as we put all of their answers together, it became clear that they all had the same job to do in the morning, and that is they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they drove to keep the commute interesting. One hand had to be on the wheel, but somebody had given them another hand, and there wasn't anything in it. And they just needed something to do while they drove. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock. So they also wanted something that would just go down there and stay for their morning. Good question. What do I hire when I do this job? You know, I've never framed the question that way before, but last Friday I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hire bananas. They're gone in 3 minutes. You're hungry by 7:30. If you promise not to tell my wife, I'd probably hire donuts twice a week, but they don't do it well either. They're gone fast. They crumb all over my clothes. They get my fingers gooey. Sometimes I hire bagels, but as you know, they're so dry and tasteless. Then I have to steer the car with my knees while I'm putting jam on them, and then if the phone rings, we got a crisis. I remember I hired a Snickers bar once, but I felt so guilty I've never hired Snickers again. Let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous that it easily takes me 20 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. Who cares what the ingredients are? I don't. All I know is I'm full all morning and it fits right here in my cup holder. Well, it turns out that the milkshake does the job better than any of the competitors, which in the customer's minds are not Burger King milkshakes, but it's bananas, donuts, bagels, Snickers bars, coffee, and so on. But I hope.
So I guess the question I'm asking is, so you all have one of these or two in your pocket, and the thing you have to think about is, what job did you hire this to do? And I think it's a really interesting way to look at sales. So what job is this supposed to do? I can tell you what it does for me, and what it does for me is all that matters, because this one's mine, and you can talk about yours. That's late, you know, you can have another session next time. This one for me is to make and receive calls, which I do a ton of. It's to IM my wife and text. I use iMessage tons, my wife and kids. And this has displaced my iPod because this plays music for me. Occasionally I surf the web, but I don't think it's great for that because my eyes are not getting very good. And to be frank with you, Carrie, you're right. My arm's not long enough to see those words anyway. But it's okay as a reader in a pinch, and I will answer the occasional email with this, but I kind of try not to. That's the job I've hired this to do. And so then I have to decide, is this the right thing for me to do that job with? And so John G. loves his new Samsung, which is pretty large. But I hate this thing because the job I've hired my handheld device to do is to also be a little bit smaller and a little bit more portable. So for me, and again, it's not right or wrong, but for me, this is not the right device to do the jobs that I just described. This would never, I mean, my gosh, I would have to work out for the next 20 years to get arms as big as Kurt to have this not look ridiculous while I'm jogging around. I mean, this looks like a satellite navigator. People are going to think, oh, he's from the short bus. I hope he doesn't get lost on the way home. I mean, what in the world? So this isn't going to do it for me. And there's a trend towards a little bit larger phone. But please, people, I'm trying to get done here. Stay with me. This is never going to work for me because my phone also is my MP3 player. And so when I go to the gym and exercise with it, this larger and larger kind of trend would drive me out of having this as my device because that is a critical component for me. John, that may not be important to him. And in fact, as I age and my eyes get worse, maybe bigger footprint is going to be more important, and maybe I'll go back to an iPod or something else.
So you're getting back at me because of what Carrie said to you about your age. Is that the deal?
I said nothing about your age. I said as I age.
Backpedal with cash.
Yeah.
Listen, people, they're like 10 or 15 minutes. If we could just make it about me, we can all go somewhere else. If you want to make it about all of you, we're going to be here a while. So what I'm saying is, what job did you hire that to do? Could I give you one more example? I decided that I needed a Windows 8 type of tablet of some kind. I looked at the Surface, it's kind of heavy. I couldn't decide which one I wanted to get. I bought the Sony. I don't know, have you ever seen a Sony Bravia TV or whatever? The displays on a Sony are off the charts. If there's anything they do great, I mean, they do a lot of things great, but one of those things is, I mean, their displays are just ridiculously beautiful, right? So I'm in Best Buy, and I look at that thing, and I say, well, Roger, if you're going to get me one of these things, the Sony looks absolutely gorgeous compared to the Surface. So I'd rather have a Sony. And this runs Windows 8, and it has the same processor as the Surface Pro, blah, 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 128 of this, and 56 of those, and 16 and whatever. And so, yeah, I want one of these. And I get it, and I say, I don't need my iPad anymore. And so I made this horrible error where I converted over to this completely, told my kids, you can have the iPad, I'm done with it because it's not for me anymore, because this is going to be my device, and spent about 3 weeks trying to force myself to love it. And I'm looking over at the kids while they're doing stuff on the iPad and having this longing feeling like that girlfriend from high school. And you know, the one where that one time when you went to the roller rink and Night Ranger was playing and you skated with her, and Yeah, I know. Pam Norrie, she was hot. And realized that the job I was trying to hire this thing to do was portability when I'm out of the office. My Link client, yeah, it's great at that. The Office 365, awesome. Using it on the plane because it actually fits with this Bluetooth breakaway keyboard on that little tray better than any laptop I've ever used. I can actually be productive on the plane and all of that stuff. But when it comes down to just flipping reading a book, I hate that. It's too big. I don't know if I'm supposed to hold it like this and be dramatic. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this thing. It's just, and look, when I say it's too big, I'm talking about inches of footprint, but it's too big. It's awful as a reader. It's the worst ever. It has nothing to do with whether it's Apple or whether it's PC or it doesn't matter. It's awful as a reader, and I can't stand it. It's just too big. And even the MacBook Air and this are not that far, I mean the iPad Air, they're not that far off. This is way lighter than the Surface Pro. That Bluetooth is cool, but yeah. So then I say, I can't do this because I hired it for the wrong job. And it's not good at this job. It doesn't do what this does. And that's not my own bias. That's just reality. That's what it is. So I say, what did they hire their phone system to do? And Byron asks all the time, what's the user experience going to be? What are you going to do with this thing? Why are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? What do they want to dial from home? Are they going to use their mobile? What are they going to do? And in discovery, we should find out, well, you know what? The phone system is actually competing with their mobile phone and all these other things. You're not competing with Cisco and Avaya. You're competing with their mobile phone, and there are other ways to communicate, and Skype, and whatever else. And so I think the question, and I just wanted this to be some food for thought, what job are they hiring that piece of technology to do? And once you know what job they're going to do, you find out that milkshakes are better than donuts and bagels and bananas and Snickers and all the other things you could hire to do. And so now my purchasing decisions, I think about, what job did they hire me to do? And this is just a little fun tip for you. You should ask yourself what job your wife or husband hired you to do. And think about that. That has actually sort of changed the dynamic of my wife and I's relationship. Because I started thinking, it's kind of like, what benefit do I bring to this relationship? And it might be very bloody little. I mean, after we had the 5 kids, maybe she moved on. I mean, maybe she didn't need my donation anymore. And so I think about that and I say, she hit me right in the demographic. There's no. The question is, so what job did they hire you to do? And Clayton's right. If we think about that differently, we're going to sell differently. We're going to ask better questions. When we ask better questions, we're probably going to come to a solution. So I just wanted you to think. As we sort of race through this, I won't even bore you with all of the additional case studies. But here's one in particular where longtime customer wanted VXPulse. Our partner said, hey, if you're going to do Pulse, that's in the cloud. You've had Tracker on-premise forever. You ever thought about Tracker in the cloud? Well, that would eliminate some servers and some hassle. For me, how much is it? Well, it's 8 times what you're currently paying, but at least the hassle goes away. We throw that out there thinking the guy's going to say, no way, get out of here. 2 weeks later, he came back and said, I like that idea. Let's go with it. Why were we so afraid to tell him what the SaaS model was going to cost? Because, he'd already bought it, so he was just on some maintenance. Converting over to managed service was seemed a little bit hard. It seemed a little pricey to us. Totally worth it to him. Get rid of the hassle, move on. Wow, that was awesome. Ohio Health. John and I were in a meeting. I said to John invited me to come with him out to Ohio. We sat down with the telecom manager. We said, hey, we've got this new thing called VXPulse. You've been a Tracker customer forever. You love Tracker. Have you looked at Pulse? He said, I already got some network monitoring tools, but I guess as a favor to John, I'll take a look. We put Michael on the phone. First thing out of the guy's mouth, I already got SolarWinds. We're good. Michael said, well, maybe there isn't much for me to show you, but can I show you one thing? Showed him one thing. 10 minutes later, he's like, I really don't like SolarWinds. Okay. And it's really quite expensive. In fact, how much is yours? We told him. He said, that's less than the maintenance I'm currently paying. And it does all these other things. And you're going to do some stuff where it integrates with Tracker and. Sign me up. 20 plus micros. Nice deployment. All because the guy said, as we started asking the questions, well, What is it you're hiring your network monitoring software to do? What is it you want to get out of it? Are you getting what you want out of it? Asking better questions, okay? So this one's kind of interesting. All they use Tracker for is a menu board for their season ticket renewals, and it gets real competitive among these kind of young interns that are on the phone. And whoever's made the most calls of the day has the biggest bar across the board, and they get real competitive with each other, and they just bang away at the phone. And they found that their productivity's gone through the roof as they made it sort of fun and competitive. Kind of simple, kind of easy, but really sort of changed the dynamic of what they do. They have a little bit of a boiler room area where everybody's just dialing away. So we just put a tracker graph up on the wall that says who's made the most calls today. They know whoever makes the most calls will probably make the most renewals. Whoever makes the most renewals will probably make the most money. They just made it competitive by using Tracker to stick it up on a menu board. That was kind of fun. One of the largest defense companies in the world, they had a very specific problem. If one of their contractors calls a country that's on the terrorist watch list, they could lose their government license. They need to know immediately. If you pick up the phone and dial Libya, they want to know. So they said, okay, can you alert and alarm us if they call any of these area codes? Yes. Boom. Done. Put it in. They didn't even ask us how much it cost. Just, we have to have that. Someone has to tell us that. So very specific need, but certainly a very critical need for them.
And then they went on to add mobile.
Sorry. And then they went on to add mobile because, again, the same mobile, thank you, John, the mobile call records with the same area codes are just as critical as the desk phones. Because somebody said, well, this is cool that you've got that in here. Have you thought about what would happen if they called with one of their cell phones? Geez Louise, we'll lose our license. We can't do it, right? Billions of dollars they would lose in potential revenue. This one's kind of fun. Somebody said, are you ready for VoIP? I don't know. Let's put it in. We ran it for, somebody told me, 14 minutes. 14 minutes later, VXPulse said, brothers, you are not ready. That's awesome. I mean, we deployed it, and in 14 minutes, you have a boatload of problems. But here's what we can do to remediate that. And I don't remember how long it was. Was it a couple weeks, a month later, a couple weeks later? They remediated a few things, had their experts help them with them, put it back in, test calls. Oh, you know what? Looking a lot better. Still a few things we'd like to see you tweak a little bit, but now there's a real chance for you to do a VoIP deployment and not embarrass yourself. And I don't mean from the partner standpoint, I mean from the customer standpoint, where they'd go, geez Louise, this was a bad choice or a bad decision, right? So again, food for thought, helping us understand how do we use those modules to truly differentiate ourselves the way Axe has gone into the market and changed their market completely. The way that Clayton Christensen suggests that milkshakes are not bought to eat, they're purchased to occupy our time as we drive 20 minutes and to have something to do, and so I don't get hungry a little bit later around 10:30, right? Asking a little bit better questions, you get to better answers. Now, I said there would be something about hair before I quit. You recognize this guy? Yeah, it was me. Huh? I mean, seriously. Huh? Yeah. I used to sing for Tears for Fears. This is my lovely wife, back when we were both younger. I think that speaks for itself. I'll just kind of leave that there. We're right on time. Are there any questions? Again, my intention is not to teach you how to sell. You're all veterans. You're all savvy veterans. You're better than I am, probably. And that's fine. But I really think at the core of it, there's, to recap, three things we really ought to think about. One, all salespeople, all professionals need to practice. If it's good enough for Belichick, it's good enough for us. If it's good enough for Peyton Manning or Ray Allen or any of those, it probably ought to be good enough for us. Maybe a takeaway would be, let's go back and practice a little bit. There's some things we can practice that are just sort of regular, everyday, blocking and tackling, but we ought to get good at. Two, maybe we should start asking, why are they hiring this technology in the first place? What do you want that phone to do? What do you want that video conferencing system to do? Well, we want it to make calls. No, that's actually not good enough. What is it you're trying to get done? Well, I'm trying to get face-to-face conversation. I got it. What is it you're trying to get done? Well, our sales team is spread all across the country, And every Tuesday morning, we'd like to have a face-to-face because the expense of bringing everybody in quarterly is kind of high. Maybe we could eliminate that, and maybe we'll get better collaboration and work environment, and we'll do better together. Okay, now we're getting closer. What are you really trying to get done? Well, if we had an ideal situation, we'd have everybody live right here in our local town, but that doesn't make sense. So that's what we're trying to get done. Ah, okay. Now I know why you want it, and I'm telling you right now our solution's probably a really good fit for that. And you just like shorten the sales cycle by a gazillion minutes of churn. And then as we think about the various modules, add the analytics piece, record, maybe the ability to kind of hear the calls and hear the sound of whether it's really good or bad or not, indifferent, or a whiny user perhaps. The ability to have that sticky reporting that I've talked about for the last couple days. And using Pulse, as Michael talked about, in a pre-assessment sort of pre-assessment, pre-deployment phase, which we've already found really successful. And we'd strongly ask you to consider using that as a tool to make sure that it really works before you go and deploy your solution. And then monitoring on the way. And then as they really love the reports, it gets sticky, and that becomes a recurring revenue source that just kind of generates money month after month for years and years to come. Boy, that's really, really valuable. And so I talked yesterday about it being the tip of the spear. Find one of those things that's kind of a pain point for them and solve that and bring the rest of the suite in. That's really kind of our goal with you. And again, not teaching you how to sell, but hopefully giving you some ideas on how to drive our product through your ecosystem. And again, our goal is very simple. We state it over and over in almost every session. We want you to make a lot of money because we know that means seats and money for us. And that's really all our goal is. Any more questions about that? Was that adequate for the tech people as well? Adequate? Yeah, adequate. Okay. Thanks. Any? So does a couple of swear words, but we're not going there. So anything from the group? Any thoughts, feelings? Yes.
It was not the Super Bowl. It was the NFC Championship.
Yeah, it was against the Cowboys. Against the Cowboys. Yeah. And I actually
was thinking that, but didn't want to.
No, my mistake. It was absolutely against the Cowboys, and one of the largest Cowboy fans in North America is sitting right here, and I was hoping for that point of clarification. Well, I wasn't hoping, but
You knew it was coming.
well, I made a mistake, but what are you going to do? You just keep going. So, anything else? Any questions? I know you just want to get out of here, as do I.
Say it again.
Florida one.
Oh, and Florida won just now? Oh, thank you, Gail. Number 1 over 16.
Crack tech staff couldn't keep the scores up.
We asked them to take them down while we were talking, so people weren't distracted. Anything else? Okay. Well, thanks. It was fun again. This is only.